Born in the mid-1980s in Trujillo in northwestern Peru, Jana Claudia Gomez Menendez was the oldest of three children of Clara Patricia Menendez Leon and Jose Gomez. Jana's mother was a devoted and caring homemaker, and her father worked in law enforcement, more specifically as a warden in a prison. Jana's childhood was like any other girl's, but unfortunately at one point their family faced tragedy. Her sister died at home of natural causes, but the details of this are not known. Jana was always an obedient and diligent girl with big ambitions and dreams. She planned to get a professional education and start a family. The only time when Jana showed some rebelliousness, at least, that strongly broke out of the strict principles her father tried to instill in her, was when she got a small tattoo of a butterfly on the back of her head. Since the girl had always been close to her mother and had a deep respect for her, she did not hide it from her and immediately told about the tattoo. Clara recalls that she told her that the butterfly was very beautiful, but warned her that her father would be displeased, and Jana replied that she would just braid a pigtail to hide the tattoo. After graduating from high school, Jana enrolled in a business administration course at the private Antonio Orrego University. Jana was attractive and outgoing and had a large circle of friends, but like all young girls, in her 20s she became addicted to chatting with people on online dating sites. At that time, there were no dating apps yet, and Jana used chat rooms to meet new people. This is how she met American William Trickett Smith Jr. in 2006. Born January 18, 1980 in Pang, Pennsylvania, William was the son of William Trickett Smith Sr., a former chairman of the Dauphin County Republican Committee. His father was stripped of his office and imprisoned in 1985 for bid manipulation and convicted of theft. The identity of William's mother, on the other hand, was hidden to the public. William's family, aside from his father's high position for a time, was not particularly wealthy. In fact, the saying "the apple doesn't roll far from the tree" is very appropriate for this family, because eventually, William, like his father, tied his life to illegal activities, mainly related to trafficking in illegal substances. Around 1999, he had a son with a woman whose identity was also concealed, with whom William was not particularly close. In the early 2000s, William was arrested along with two other men after their car was stopped by police officers and found to contain a shipment of illegal substances packaged for sale, as well as cash and a firearm. At that time, William was sentenced to 2 years in prison for trafficking in a controlled substance. A short time later, he was released on parole, but because he did not comply with the relevant requirements, he was again apprehended and placed in custody. Thus, in 2004, he was found guilty of escape and evading arrest after fleeing from a vehicle that was stopped by the police. William was sentenced to 4 years probation, of which he served 9 months behind bars. Despite the fact that William had already violated the law and the terms of his probation multiple times, he was again released early. He then returned to his family home in Pang, and it was from there that he met Jana online. William introduced himself as a vice president of a company in Pennsylvania and promised Jana a prosperous, carefree, and trouble-free existence. In fact, she wasn't the only girl he was socializing with, and his pathological lies date back to the moment they met. After a few weeks of socializing, Jana and William decided to start a long-distance relationship. After some more time, Jana invited her boyfriend over to her place in Peru so they could get to know each other live and spend time together, and she even offered him to stay at their house for a few days. To the girl's great delight, William agreed, and in August of that year, he made his first trip to Peru to be near the girl he claimed to love. Although Clara immediately accepted her daughter's chosen one, Jose, on the contrary, regarded him with distrust, perhaps because of the special intuition he had developed during his work in the police force. Jose immediately told Jana that he did not think William was a suitable partner for her, but seeing how much his daughter was in love, decided to respect her decision and make no attempt to hinder the relationship. After all, Jose knew how judicious and intelligent his daughter could be and trusted her decisions. Things were going well, and since William had the money for frequent flights, distance wasn't a problem for the couple. Of course, the boyfriend didn't bother to tell Jana that the money he was living on was illegally obtained and that his leaving America was also violating the terms of his parole. In February 2007, William met Monica Cecilia Munoz Pereda, another young girl, a student at the University of Lima, over the internet. Monica immediately made it clear that she did not want to build a romantic relationship with him, as she almost immediately learned about his relationship with Jana, but this did not prevent them from remaining friends. This is the version told by Monica herself, but some sources indicate that she did have an affair with William, and that they often met each other secretly from Jana. A little less than a year after meeting, William proposed to Jana, and the latter, in love and happy, agreed without hesitation. Jana and William got married in March 2007 in Trujillo. At the time, Jana was 21 years old, and William was 26 years old. Jana wore a pink dress, and footage from the wedding shows how happy she was. Only a few of her relatives attended the ceremony, and no one from William's family, not even his friends. William told his new wife and Gomez Menendez's close relatives that he planned to leave everything he had in the United States to start a new life from scratch in Peru. The girl's happiness didn't last long. Now that Jana and William started living together, the girl found out that her husband was not at all who he claimed to be. Very soon she realized that she had tied her life to a cruel and jealous man who controlled her every step and did not allow her to communicate with anyone but him. Due to this behavior of her spouse, Jana had to drop out of the university, and from that moment she began to spend all her time locked up at home. Of course, this had a detrimental effect on her mood and personality in general, but nevertheless, she did not seek to break up the marriage. On the contrary, she was sincerely in love with her husband and was ready to do anything to please him. At one point, William wrote to Monica and asked where he could get strong sleeping pills and a boat, and explained that he wanted to do so unofficially to avoid unnecessary red tape. He asked about these items several weeks apart and thought he could not arouse suspicion. After his next trip to the United States on July 2, 2007, William called Jana and told her that he had returned to Lima and was waiting for her so that they could go on a trip to Cuzco and celebrate their 4 months of their marriage. The girl immediately informed her mother about their plans. Jana told her that first she would go to Lima to meet her husband and collect her passport with her new surname, and then they would go to Cusco for a kind of honeymoon. On Thursday, July 5, 2007, the couple checked in at the Hotel San Remo, located in the business district of Linxi in the nation's capital. On Saturday, just after noon, they went for a boat ride on the Carrillos River. Jana felt great and was sure that only a happy future lay ahead, which, judging by her husband's changed demeanor, was bound to be better than it had been in recent months. But the next day, Sunday, July 8, 2007, that confidence crumbled before her eyes. Whether something triggered it, or whether Jana's fate had been sealed even before that journey, the authorities could not give a definite answer to that question, and the only person who knew for sure refused to answer. All that is known for certain is that William mercilessly strangled his wife that day, and then contacted Monica, announcing that he was willing to pay any amount necessary to anonymously rent a boat, and made it clear to her that this was to happen that very evening. At the end of his message, William inquired about the Peruvian police's handling of missing persons reports. William then placed Jana's body in his dark blue suitcase and tied ropes around it. That same evening, 2 hotel guards named Oscar Jose Ruiz Gomez and Hans Vladimir Achero Reyes noticed the American leaving the hotel alone with a large suitcase. William then went to Monica's apartment and there packed the suitcase again, this time wrapping it with duct tape. From there, they both went to the Carrillos neighborhood of Lima, renting a boat from Justo Jose Sauvignon Solano, a fisherman and operator of boat tours in the area. It was only when Monica and William had sailed a decent distance from shore that the girl asked what was in the suitcase, at which point the guy replied that it was just some old documents and papers for a business partner. 15 minutes after they sailed away from the shore, William threw the suitcase overboard. According to Monica's later account, she was horrified that he had just thrown the trash into the ocean like that. And then William, who had already thought of answers to any questions, told her that it was a tradition of American businessmen. When they wanted to forget something, they threw it into the depths of the sea. Back on shore, William had Monica impersonate his wife in order to cancel Jana's cell phone service. That way her number would be disconnected, and by the man's design, she would be harder to trace. After all this, William simply got on a plane to the US and headed home. On Wednesday, July 11, 2007, William called Jana's family in Peru from the US to ask where she was. Clara and Jose thought the question was strange, since their daughter was supposed to be with him at the time, and immediately pointed this out to William, but the man responded by denying that he had traveled to Peru at all. Perplexity was replaced by anxiety and panic in Jana's relatives. But despite this, at first they tried to keep a positive attitude and hopefully wait that soon the girl will get in touch. As time passed, the family's hopes were dwindling. Realizing that they could not wait any longer, they reported Jana missing on July 26, 2007. William returned to Peru from the United States on July 31st, declaring his intention to help in the search. In Trujillo, he stayed at Jana's family home. The family, against all odds, clung to the slightest chance of finding her alive. One day, Clara noticed that her son-in-law had Jana's diary, and when she asked him about it, the boy said he might have taken it by mistake when he left the United States. Meanwhile, August came, but there was still no news of Jana. On August 15, 2007, there was a devastating earthquake with an epicenter in the ocean 93 miles south of Lima. Nature raged for about 2 minutes, but it was enough to cause serious damage to Peru's central coast. Large amounts of water flooded coastal areas, and with it, the waves brought many things that the ocean had been lurking on shore. The next day, several fishermen found a blue suitcase floating on the beach. The fishermen untied the ropes and removed the duct tape that had been wrapped around the suitcase and discovered the gruesome find, then immediately reported it to the authorities. The police arrived on the scene and determined that the suitcase had been weighted and had been in the water for some time, but had been swept ashore by the earthquake. Soon enough, news reports widely publicized the gruesome find so that the case attracted widespread public attention. William, however, as soon as it was announced that the suitcase had been found, left Peru the same day. Identifying the victim was a very difficult task. At that time, Jana had been in the water for over a month, and her body was not in the best condition. To identify the victim, forensic experts used the technique of superimposing images using photographs and also reconstructed her fingers to take fingerprints, as the expert who conducted the procedure later said. As soon as Jana's relatives learned of the suitcase and its contents, they reported to the morgue for identification, though they continued to hope it was not her. However, upon barely noticing the blue butterfly tattoo on the back of her head, Clara confirmed her worst fears. Shocked and heartbroken, Clara and Jose vowed to get justice, no matter what the cost. In addition, Clara already knew where to start the investigation because she immediately recognized the suitcase. She had seen it many times when William came to visit them from the United States. In the autopsy report, there were 6 possible causes of death, but they all agreed in one. Jana died because of a long oxygen deprivation. Soon the details became known, which made the people of Trujillo shudder with horror, because this crime was one of the most terrible that took place in the city. Major Manuel Leon was appointed chief investigator, who decided to develop the investigation of the owner of the suitcase, as Clara had told him. He also learned from her that Jana was going on a trip with her husband William, during which they were going to stay at the Hotel San Remo, and so the investigator went there to try to find out anything from the staff. 2 porters identified Jana and William as visitors to the hotel, and also remembered William leaving the hotel with the exact same suitcase in which the remains were found, alone. Then the reconstruction of events and the corresponding chronology allowed the investigators to find Monica. Major Manuel identified her whereabouts and even managed to talk to her. It turned out that Monica was at that time in Italy, where she had moved for the duration of her studies. Soon the girl returned to Peru at the request of her parents and the demand of the authorities. Monica stated that she was ready to cooperate with the investigation in any way possible, and also identified the suitcase. When she told everything she knew, the authorities still issued a ban for her to leave the country for the duration of the investigation. At the same time, Jana's body was handed over to her relatives so they could hold a funeral. Only those closest to her were present at the ceremony, and they were all shocked at the absurd loss. Meanwhile, in the United States, on August 24, 2007, William was arrested and sent to the Dowan County Jail in Pennsylvania for traveling to Peru 11 times without informing his probation officer. At the same time, a search warrant was obtained for his home, during which various of Jana's belongings were found in the home, including cut and torn clothing, sand sneakers, and her identification card. On September 20th of that year, Judge Joseph Kleinfelter resentenced William to between 2 and 6 years in prison for the parole violation. As a result, William was transferred to the Pennsylvania State Correctional Institution in Cole Township. As part of their cooperation in solving crimes in Peru, U.S. authorities transported Jana's belongings to a police station in Lima so that the girl's parents could identify them, which they did. Afterward, prosecutor Rafael Aguero Pinto charged William with taking his wife's life. The prosecutor added that two accomplices, Monica and the fisherman Justo Jose, who rented them the boat, were also suspected of the crime. William's lawyer, Don Bailey, called the allegations preposterous, but the local police deemed the evidence gathered sufficient to initiate proceedings for his extradition from the United States. At the same time, Major Manuel promised that the investigation would be thorough to ensure that the suspect would stand trial in Peru. The criminal charges were formally filed on June 18, 2008, by the provincial prosecutor of the 10th Criminal Prosecutor's Office of Lima, Elmero Rios Luque. Specifically, he was charged with crimes against the person and health of his wife under the article on feminicide. The following month, Judge Blanca Epifania Masuelo Borquez ordered an investigation against William and issued an arrest warrant for him to stand trial. On September 22, 2008, the Peruvian Supreme Court ruled that the extradition request was correct and ordered the case to be sent to the Minister of Justice. After another month, Judge Victor Vicente Santander Salvador of the 22nd Criminal Court of Lima sent the request for provisional arrest, which was to be executed in accordance with the extradition treaty between the United States of America and the Republic of Peru. On November 10, 2008, in a supreme decree, then Peruvian President Alan Garcia signed the documents necessary to place William in Peruvian custody and ordered that they be transmitted to the United States government through diplomatic channels. This gesture brought some comfort to the victim's mother, who now wished only that justice would be served. The woman's grief was so great that she could not even touch Jana's belongings, and the dead girl's room remained untouched for a long time. It seemed that justice was now about to be served, as shortly thereafter, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Federal District of Central Pennsylvania received an extradition request, and on July 14, 2009, U.S. Judge Andrew Scheer ruled that enough evidence had been presented to warrant a trial for William to be sent for pre-trial detention in Peru. However, 2 months later, U.S. District Judge James Monell postponed the case after Public Defender James Wade filed an emergency motion to appeal. This delayed Jana's trial, as William's defense insisted that the evidence presented was insufficient to extradite him to Peru. Fortunately, in the end, another judge reviewed all the evidence presented and dismissed the appeal. Once all obstacles were cleared, William was sent from the United States to Peru. This happened on August 12, 2010, when the man was flown out of his home country through Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport in Atlanta, Georgia, and taken to Jorge Chavez International Airport outside of Lima. On board Delta Airlines Flight 151, the defendant was escorted by Interpol agents, wore a bulletproof vest, and barely off the plane, was taken to the airport police station. William looked haggard as on-duty prosecutor Wilfredo Rivera checked his personal details. After a medical examination and a visit from a representative of the U.S. Embassy, William was taken under heavy protection to the police homicide unit. When all the requirements of the police action had been met, within the next few hours, William was handed over to the 22nd District Court of Lima, which was to take up the case of Jana. While awaiting trial, the defendant was detained in a wing separated from the general prison population at the Miguel Castro prison in San Juan de Lurigancho, Lima. Shortly thereafter, on August 23, 2010, the Directorate of the Interior initiated administrative and disciplinary proceedings against prison staff. The reason was that the Peruvian television network America Television had published an image of William in the company of 3 other prisoners for public viewing. The image in question was taken with professional equipment at the prison facility. Not only was the image released to the media, but one of the inmates dedicated it to his mother and sent it as a sign that he was not treated as badly in the penitentiary as it was reported in the news. In addition to William, the 2 other extradited prisoners in custody with him were Colombian Hugo Trujillo Ospina, who was charged with committing a crime in exchange for a payoff against Peruvian businesswoman Miriam Ferrer, and Dutchman Joran van der Sloot, who was charged with the theft and taking the life of Stephanie Tatiana Flores Ramirez. The trial continued. The prosecution planned to request a 35-year prison sentence for William, but he was not the only defendant in the case. Justo and Monica also received formal charges framed by prosecutor Rafael. Justo was charged with alleged concealment of facts and Monica with alleged complicity in the taking of Jana's life. Thus, the prosecutor requested a sentence of up to 8 years in prison for the boat owner and up to 15 years in prison for the alleged accomplice. After a long investigation and trial, finally, on May 19, 2011, William Trickett Smith, Jr., pleaded guilty to the murder of his wife, Jana Claudia Gomez Menendez. According to Peruvian law, the defendant's confession should have led to a speedy conclusion of the case, consisting of a final indictment and sentence. Thus, the prosecution did not have to prove William's guilt in court. After another 4 days, William was sentenced to 31 years in prison. Also, the first criminal chamber for prisoners in prisons ordered the criminal to pay €15,570 as compensation in civil cases in favor of debtors. Cesar Perez Escobar, lawyer for the family of Jana, said that William pleaded guilty so that details of his past would not be revealed in court, since he had 23 criminal charges in the United States, some of which were proven and linked him to the trafficking of illegal substances. The lawyer explained that William confessed not to cooperate with justice, but rather to avoid being investigated for his other crimes. Also, Cesar said that he regretted that the court hearing never took place, because in this way, William could have concealed the motive of his crime, which proved impossible for Jana's parents and loved ones to understand. In this sense, the lawyer argued that they will continue to investigate to find out what really happened on that fateful day. In October of the same year, Justo and Monica were found not guilty in a Peruvian court. This decision disappointed Jana's mother, Clara, and she said it made her feel cheated by the authorities. That day, she promised to keep fighting to find out the details of the crime, but since then, no new information has been found. A few days before the 15th anniversary of the crime, William again made headlines in the local media and shocked Jana's family by announcing that he would fight for his freedom. In order to secure his acquittal, William sought the services of renowned lawyer Humberto Abanto, who had handled other scandalous cases. William called the media and presented a new version of the events of the day of Jana's death. In addition, the perpetrator claimed that he did not receive a proper defense from his first lawyer because he did not understand his advice due to his poor knowledge of Spanish. William laid out a confusing and illogical story, which of course no one believed. Then his lawyer, Humberto Abanto, tried to explain why he took the case. In a media interview, he said that William had not received a proper defense, and perhaps his sentence had been wrongly handed down. The new lawsuit reopened Clara's wound, whose daughter's death still hurt her. Nevertheless, William's appeal was rejected, and then Jana's parents were able to breathe a sigh of relief. William Smith will be held in custody at Miguel Castro Prison until June 7, 2041.